If we wanted to try, perhaps the client would like to see if 2 more chairs could be added here. We could do this a couple different ways. We could do this right in front of the client, add a couple chairs, and then we see Enscape update immediately. If we didn't quite like that, we could make some additional changes. So you see I'm trying to rotate the chair. I want to turn one 90 degrees and put it around the corner here. But each time I do that, things pause for a moment while Enscape pushes that change from Revit to its rendering engine. If we go to the Enscape tab and click pause, so in the same location as the start button is a pause button while Enscape's running. And so while it's paused, it's not taking the time and slowing things down while I'm making a series of changes, which we don't want to waste our own time, but we also don't want to do that in front of the client. Of course, there's several scenarios where this could work. And perhaps these are sort of just rotated like that. And then once we're done developing this new layout, we go back to the Enscape tab and click Resume. Another thing that's really helpful about having Enscape open while you're modeling is if you're drawing walls, to make sure that the bottom of the wall goes to the correct height. So if I were to pick a couple points here and try to draw a wall, first of all, I don't see it in plan. I might be a little confused at what happened. But then in Enscape, I actually see something up above. So in this case, because I just drew that, I'm going to select undo to make it go away. Seeing as it's not in the view and I can't easily select it, I'll go back to the wall command and notice that the base offset was set to 8 foot 10 1/4. I'm going to change that to 0. And then also I'll notice the top constraint. Maybe this is intended to be a low wall, just to separate some of the cubicles. So I'm going to set the top constraint to level 2, which is also where the base constraint is, but rather than having a 0 offset, we'll make this 3 foot 6. Click a couple of points to add a wall, and there it is. I can use the arrow key to sort of nudge this over. Then with this wall selected, if I go to the selection box, ZF to zoom to fit, I can use the paint command from the modify tab. So if I name my materials with PT in it, So here is a PT4 material. Perhaps only this outside edge and the sides get the paint, and then perhaps there's some wood cap that will be added. Now over in Enscape, we can see the color change. So this can be really helpful to open Enscape and just leave it open while you design. Using the move command rather than the arrow key to nudge is a little faster, because every time you arrow key, Enscape pushes the update, so there can be a brief pause. Here's another little conflict that perhaps we weren't thinking of. We thought we knew how tall the cubicle walls are, but we see that maybe there's some other filler piece that we weren't thinking about, so perhaps this wants to be 3'8", or something just to make the wall taller than the cubicle. And again, I'm referring back to the navigation introduction. I'm actually using a 3D Connection 3D mouse to really smoothly navigate the model. One last thing to talk about: if you want to basically track a problem or something you want to follow up on, especially if you're sitting in front of a client, but possibly just for yourself. Let's say we wanted to make sure that electrical added outlets to this low wall, or just to let them know that it exists. On the Enscape tab, we could select the Create View command. This is going to create a Revit view based on the current Enscape view. So maybe we call this issue 01 and then a description. So the next one would be issue 02. So add electrical to new wall. We select OK. And now in Revit we have a new 3D view, issue 01, add electrical to wall. So if Enscape were closed, and when we get back to the office we have a few of these views, we open this one up, just the words themselves might be enough to remind us what we were supposed to do, and can then send an email to the MEP group. Or we open the view and we can see what it was that we were looking at when we made that note. And if we're still unclear, we can actually start Enscape with this view current, and Enscape will start in that from that same vantage point that we were looking at when we created the camera view in Revit to begin with. The speed in which Enscape opens relates to the power of your graphics card. So the particular computer I'm using has an NVIDIA GTX 1070 graphics card. So now we can even move around just to, again, get a better idea of what we were thinking about when we made this issue. And then we can close this. And then once the issue's been dealt with, we could rename this if we wanted to track it, or we could just delete it. So when I say rename it, issue 01-add electrical to new wall -resolved, or just delete it, and now that issue is dealt with. Sort of an informal way of tracking issues within Revit using Enscape. So that's a quick overview of the concept of designing with Enscape.